today is from the book of Revelation. And it is, in Revelation, we get a wonderful description of heaven. Today's All Saints Sunday, and so we're thinking about remembering those people we have lost, and the people, especially in the last year, who passed away, but really all those who now we don't have here with us, but we have this promise that they are taken care of, and they are with God and living in this blessed life to come. And here's a great description. Ellie, would you read that for us?
Yes. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. And they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." Then one of the elders asked me, "These in white robes, who are they, and where did they come from?" I answered, "Sir, you know." And he said, "These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. Never again will they hunger. Never again will they thirst. The sun will not beat down on them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will lead them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes." May God bless the reading of his word.
Amen. Thank you, Ellie. All right, there's a beautiful image of heaven. It's kind of the writer of Revelation trying to give us a picture, trying to give us a sense, and using a lot of worldly images to do that. But it is a very comforting picture for us, and we don't get many pictures of heaven in the scriptures. So this is of particular interest, and it has so many wonderful things to say. It does make heaven appear just such a wonderful place. Did you notice how it said all the needs are gone? The need for food, you're not going to be hungry, the need for shelter is gone. All of that is going to be taken care of. All of these things that require us in this world to be a little bit selfish, in a good way, to make sure that we have all these things we need, well, that's all taken care of. And we are one, everything is washed away. All the bad stuff, all the stuff, all the guilt, oh boy, we carry a lot of that around with us. All of that is gone. All of the sins are gone. Everything, and we are washed away. They're wearing white. That's a beautiful image. And it's a comfort to us, isn't it, to know that the people we love are taken care of. And they are with God. And they are experiencing the love of God, not the way we experience it, a little. We can feel it, and it can have a big impact on us, but we cannot feel it fully. We cannot feel it completely, and they can. And they have all the joy that comes from that, being close to God. But that's just half the story, because they also get the joy of being fully and completely reconciled to one another. All those little things that keep us apart, all those things that can cause us to dislike each other, all the things that can make it hard even to be with those we love, all those things are dropped away. And we are fully at peace with one another. It's wonderful. It's a great picture. And one mistake we make when we think about heaven is we limit it to the time after we die. We limit heaven to this point, this existence after death. But you know what? Heaven has spilled out into this world. We can get a sense of it in the here and now. And some of the very best parts of heaven are offered to us right now. In fact, when we start our journey of faith, when we begin reaching out toward God, when we start saying, gosh, I want to do what God wants in this world, we are starting on this wonderful journey. And death isn't an end to that. It is a culmination. All of that we've been working toward, trying to get closer to God, trying to feel closer to one another, all of that is fully realized when we get to heaven. And so the moment of our death, it's not really an ending, and it's not really a beginning. It is a wonderful continuation there. And I always thought that that was an important thing to emphasize in our funeral services. When we have a funeral service, a memorial service here at the church, we want to emphasize two important things. First, the gospel. The good news. God loves us so much that he sent us his son. And because of Christ and because of his sacrifice on the cross, we are taken care of. Every service here at this church begins as a worship service, including our funerals and our memorial services. That's why we're here, to worship God and to give thanks to God. But there's also a time, and this is very important, you got to have both ends. You got to have the gospel, but you also, at least in my heart, you have to have that time to be able to recognize how God's love, experienced by this person that we have lost, how did God's love express itself in that unique person? So there's the general message of the gospel, true for all who follow Christ. And then take time also in the memorial service to recognize specifically, how did it affect this one person? How did this one person live their life and not only feel God's love, but show God's love to their friends, to their families, to their church, to their community? That, to me, is a wonderful kind of memorial service. And it's something we strive for, but it's really delicate, because you can easily sort of fall off in either direction. And frankly, for the minister, it's a lot easier if we just focus on the gospel. Kind of forget that personal stuff. I mean, it's possible, and you may have been to a funeral or a memorial service like this, where it's all gospel, and it kind of seems like the minister has this thing that he or she's used many times, and they have a blank space there where the name goes, and they get their pencil out, and they pencil in the name, and they read, there's the service, and then when they're done, they erase the name, and they're ready for the next time. You know, service where there's nothing personal. What a lost opportunity that is. Because, boy, you look at the world, look at those people you know, look at the people around you here, and how we express God's love so differently from one another. But yet it's our differences that see such beauty, so amazing to be able to have that opportunity to be able to talk about those differences and the way God's love impacted this person we have lost, and not to use it. But that's very sad. So it's something we want to strive for, this balance between the gospel and presenting how the gospel affected this one person. But you know, you can go the other direction too and make the mistake to make it all personal. All just about this person and their life here on earth. And then, yeah, we'll throw in some gospel to kind of fill in the corners. You know, we should have a prayer, and we should probably say something about heaven, so we'll stick that in, but mostly it's going to be about this person and their life in this world, and we can make the mistake of erring in that direction too. In fact, this is kind of becoming a trend a little bit, people really focusing in on individually what we all love, and making that the focus of the funeral service instead of the gospel, and instead of how the gospel affected this person. I saw an article this week on the internet, and I had to click on this one. It was how to organize a Star Wars funeral. A Star Wars themed funeral. And apparently this is a trend. You can have a Star Wars themed funeral. You can have a Superman, or a superhero, Marvel or DC, themed funeral if you want to. All these different, anything that you love in this world. You can have a golf themed funeral. Do anything. But this was Star Wars, and I love Star Wars, so I had to click on this. Star Wars themed funeral. Click on it, and none of the advice was, it was all pretty, you could have figured this out. They said one of the first pieces of advice was suggest that people who attend wear Star Wars costumes. So you got your Princess Leia outfit, you didn't know what you're going to do with it? There you go, you can wear it to a Star Wars themed funeral. Another piece of advice was play the music, forget religious music, play the music from Star Wars, John Williams, and play the Force theme. Na, 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 na. That's it. It's got a good for, this guy said that's good for a funeral. They even suggested you could hire guys to wear stormtrooper outfits to be the pallbearers. So there's another idea. All right, I guess if you feel like you're kind of on the dark side, you may want to get some stormtroopers in there to lead you to the hereafter. And again, this is just one example, one way that we kind of focus on this world and worldly things and make them the most important thing in the funeral. I read about another guy, and this got my attention too. And he had a very specific idea for how he wanted to be laid to rest. And so he built a custom-made coffin that was this tall and this wide. It was made out of plexiglass. And he was in the coffin on his Harley Davidson. And they put him in there, and they sealed it up, and everybody could see. And I suppose they got a crane to lift that and to put that down. And so that was his funeral, was the theme of Harley Davidson and his love for that. And, here's one more. There's one more I read. And it's about a guy who had driven an ice cream truck all his life. And so after the funeral, his ice cream truck led the procession to the graveyard, to the cemetery for the interment service. And then after the little short interment service was over, they served ice cream. Okay, that's a good idea. You have to admit, that is a good one. Ice cream after the service at the funeral, that would really work. But the point is, it is easy to concentrate on one or the other, this world or the next. And the very best funerals weave both together. And the reason that's of comfort to us it is recognizing what is so true about the gospel. That the gospel begins when we start reaching out to God. And there's a waypoint along the way when we die, but it continues God's love into eternity. And the very best services are services that focus on this fact. It was just a few weeks ago, I found myself, after doing over 100 funerals and memorial services here at this church, I attended a service. And I sat, instead of sitting up in the pulpit or behind the pulpit, I sat with my family after the death of Leslie's mom, Nancy. And that was over in Fort Worth at UCC, and we were all sitting there in the front rows right there. And I have to say, this service was remarkable. It was such a beautiful service. It really moved me, and I just thought it was just one of the very best funeral and memorial services I have ever been to. And there was one reason for that. It wasn't the church, it wasn't the excellent ministers who were involved, or the fact that the choir sang and they did a beautiful job. It wasn't the bulletin, and it wasn't the meal we had beforehand at the church. The thing that made it incredible, that made it one of the very best and most meaningful memorial services I've ever been to, is that Nancy, my mother-in-law, planned the whole service. She had figured it out. She had figured out just about every detail. She had used her great knowledge of the Bible to pick the verses from the Bible that she felt best exemplified her belief and her faith. The verses that she knew would be of the greatest comfort to her family and her friends. All her life she was a musician and she was a singer, and so she chose the music as well. And the music was just the same way. It was music that was uplifting and praising God, giving God thanks for the love of God we can experience in this world, but then also touching on the fact that that doesn't end when we die. It was wonderful music, and in fact, one of the pieces was a surprise to us, was a composition that Nancy had written, and that was wonderful. There are many ministers at UCC. She chose the minister who knew her the best to conduct the service. And then she picked Gilbert Davis, her old friend and our former senior minister here, to give the eulogy. And he was someone who knew her so well, who knew her journey of faith so well. And he was someone that she knew wouldn't just talk about her and her life, but would weave it together with the gospel message. It was such a beautiful service because it was exactly the gift that we needed to recognize and to see that so much of the reason we love Nancy so much was that she was someone who received God's love into her life and then shared it with others. And it was a wonderful service because it reminded us, too, that that love she experienced, it wasn't over. It was continuing. It was going on. And that's the message today. To remember that this promise of heaven is wonderful. And we think about it and we're glad it's there. But we have to remember, too, that it begins for us here and now. These great things of heaven, feeling connected to God, feeling close to one another, they're all things we can start on right now. We don't feel them fully or completely as we will in heaven, but right now they bring us such joy. And it is a way to live into what Christ said over and over again in the Gospels. You know, when Jesus talked about heaven, he didn't talk about heaven to come. He talked about heaven right now. He said over and over, the kingdom of heaven is near. It is really near. You can sense it. You can touch it. You can get the feel of it in your life. And he told us exactly how to do that. He said, listen, we talked about the kingdom of heaven over and over, and here are just a few of the lessons he gave us about it. The kingdom of heaven, he said, you don't get there by lifting yourself up. You may think that heaven's up there. I'm going to get there by lifting myself up above everyone else. He said, no, that's not how you feel the kingdom of heaven. You feel the kingdom of heaven by serving those around you. He said, you don't get to the kingdom of heaven, or you won't feel the kingdom of heaven here and now simply by welcoming someone into a building. No, you get there, or you feel it now by welcoming someone into a community, by welcoming someone into your circle, into your family. That's how you feel the kingdom of heaven. You don't feel the kingdom of heaven by coming to worship. You feel the kingdom of heaven by loving those that you worship with. Jesus told us the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure, and it is worth everything that you give for it. And the kingdom of heaven is not given to you. This sense of heaven, this feeling of it in your life, it isn't just a gift that's given to you, fully realized by God. It is given to you as the tiniest seed. That if you nurture it, plant it in your heart, nurture it, it is going to grow and grow, and you're going to be amazed how it takes up your life and how you feel that kingdom of heaven each and every day. All of these wonderful lessons to remind us that heaven is not something we have to wait for. Heaven is also here and now because of Jesus Christ. Because of Jesus Christ, death no longer contains heaven. Because of Jesus, death no longer contains heaven. Because of Jesus, we pass through this life, through death, and into heaven. And in the same way also, because of Jesus Christ, heaven does spill out into this world. And we can sense it. We can feel it. It's all around us if we choose to feel it. It's in the beauty of worship, it's in the wonder of nature, but most of all, it's in our relationships with one another. It's in our communities where we come together. So let's give thanks for this life to come. Let's give thanks for the heavenly reality that will be there for us when we die. But let us also give thanks for the heaven we can experience here and now. Let's bow in prayer. Loving God, we do give thanks. We give thanks that we can sense you. We can sense your presence in this world. We can, if we choose, follow you. And as we treat others with kindness and with forgiveness and with love, that we can feel a bit of heaven here on this earth. Loving God, help us to do that here in these days ahead. Help us to live in this world, to make this world like your heavenly kingdom through our actions. And in so doing, help us to bring glory to your name. Loving God, it is not easy. It is a task we have to undertake. It is not given to us. It is something we have to grow. Loving God, may the time that we spend here at this table be an opportunity for us to feed this sense of the kingdom of heaven in our lives through this bread and this cup. Loving God, we do ask that you bless these emblems to the nourishment of our bodies, to the growth of the kingdom of heaven in our hearts. Loving God, help us to feel that now as we come together in a community, in a family of faith, to receive these elements of bread and cup. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.